Have you ever seen someone you love get forgotten by their own family? Not ignored, not brushed off, I mean truly forgotten, on a day that should have meant everything. You won't believe this, but it happened to my grandmother on her 80th birthday. While she sat dressed and waiting beside an untouched cake, the rest of my family posted beach selfies like she didn't exist. At first, I thought it was just a cruel oversight, but the real story, the reason they left her behind, and what I uncovered when I ran to her side, you're not going to want to miss this. Before we dive in, tap. Like if you've ever had to stand alone for someone you love, and subscribe. It tells me these stories matter, and that people like you are still out there. My name is Elowen, and at 32, it was just past 7 when I noticed the silence. The sun hadn't quite set, but the sky over Portland had already dimmed to a pale blue, the kind that slips between buildings like a memory you can't quite hold. Outside my apartment window, the wind nudged the birch trees along the street, their shadows stretching thin and long across the sidewalk. I sat at my desk, half listening to the hum of my air purifier, pen in hand, outlining a draft logo for a local cafe. The lamp cast a warm glow over my sketchpad, soft against the creeping dusk. My phone buzzed once, a quiet vibration against the wood. I glanced at it, expecting a reminder or an email. But it was a photo, one image, Maris's dining table, a round cake untouched. 8 white candles melted into crooked stumps, their wax pooled and hardened like little ghosts. The chairs around her table were empty. The timestamp said 6:58 p.m. My hand froze mid-line. I stared, trying to process what I was seeing. It wasn't the cake that got me, or the empty chairs. It was the little things. The party hat beside her plate, the vase of flowers she must have picked herself, and the flicker of the wall clock behind her, just visible in the frame. She'd waited. She'd waited long enough for those candles to burn out, and no one came. My throat tightened. Just last week, she'd called me from her kitchen, her voice dancing with excitement. 80, Elowen, can you believe it? Your old bird's turning 80. We're going to make it special. She'd baked that cake herself. Her arthritis had been acting up again. I remembered her saying she was buying extra icing, just in case the frosting gets wonky. I should have been there. I should have made time. I swallowed hard and opened Instagram, half hoping someone, anyone, had posted about being with her. But the first story I saw was Aunt Vera, laughing, champagne in hand, her toes buried in the sand. Family time, the caption read, paired with 3 heart emojis and a shot of Uncle Torin, lounging in a beach chair, drink in hand. Oregon coast. I tapped again. Another clip. Vera twirling with Jessa under a beach umbrella. Torin barbecuing. Laughter spilling through the speakers like salt water poured on an open wound. No mention of Maris. No birthday wishes. No apologies. They didn't forget. They chose not to come. A chill crept over me, slow and deliberate. I set down my pen. My hand shook slightly as I picked up my phone, scrolling through more posts, all of them at the beach house. All of them smiling, none of them with her. Was this planned? Did she know? The light in my apartment felt suddenly too warm, too safe. The comfort of it made me angry, furious even. She'd been so proud of that party. She made tiny name cards, printed little menus. She asked me for music suggestions. She even tried to bake that lemon cake I used to love as a kid, the one with the too sweet glaze and lopsided layers. And they just left her? I stared at the last photo again, her hands in her lap, shoulders drawn in, her smile nowhere to be found. I couldn't sit here and pretend that was okay. Without thinking, I shoved aside my sketchpad and grabbed my keys. My jacket was still damp from this morning's drizzle, but I didn't care. I stuffed it on anyway. My heart thudded in my chest, heavy, erratic. Maris's house wasn't far. 20 minutes maybe, 15 if I hit green lights. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I had to go. I locked the door behind me, my fingers fumbling at the handle. The hallway felt too narrow, the air too still. Every second wasted made me itch. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed again. Another notification. I didn't look. I knew who it was. The nerve, the sheer gall, to toast on the sand while she sat with a cake melting in front of her. Had they even called her? Had anyone? The elevator doors opened with a ding, and I stepped out into the fading twilight, the city breathing softly around me. I slid into my car, shoved the key in, and sat still for just a moment. I saw her face in my mind again, not from the photo, but from last Thanksgiving. She'd handed me that ridiculous pink knitted scarf, smiling so wide it made her eyes disappear. "You're my rock, Elowen," she'd whispered. "You always see through the noise." At the time, I'd laughed. Vera had rolled her eyes and made some snide remark about sentimental nonsense. I didn't think much of it back then, but now I felt something else, something sharper, something that curled in my gut like a question with no clean answer. Why did they leave her? And what else had they done? I turned the key. The engine roared to life. I pulled onto the road without checking the notifications. I didn't want their smiles, their champagne, their hollow captions. I wanted answers, and I was going to find them. The highway hummed beneath my tires as dusk gave way to night. The orange halos of streetlights flickered past in rhythmic flashes, washing the inside of my car in pulses of amber and shadow. I drove with both hands clenched tight around the wheel, the radio off, the world reduced to the sound of my breath and the rubber hiss of the road. But my mind wasn't here. It drifted, uninvited, to last Thanksgiving, to Maris's kitchen, the smell of clove and cinnamon thick in the air, and the sound of her soft humming as she stirred gravy in her ceramic pot. She'd handed me a knitted scarf, lilac and uneven, the kind only she could pull off as a gift. Her hands trembled as she looped it around my neck, smile crinkling the corners of her eyes. "You're my rock, Elowen," she said. Her voice had dropped to a whisper, like it was a secret meant only for me, and I had believed her. Back then, I thought it was just one of those sweet things old women said to their favorite grandchild. Sentimental, yes, but fleeting. Now I wondered if she'd meant more, if she'd sensed the growing divide, the lines being drawn. In the background, I remembered Vera's laughter, loud, performative, cutting through the warmth like a blade. She was holding court in the living room, wine glass in hand, flashing photos of their newly remodeled beach house to anyone who'd look. "We'll do something huge for Mom's 80th, she'd declared, arm around Maris like she owned her. "Torin's already planning the catering. Maybe we'll fly in the kids, too. She deserves a proper celebration, right?" Maris had beamed like a child promised a pony. Her fingers squeezed mine under the table, her eyes glossy. Now I saw it. Saw what I didn't back then. Vera's grin hadn't reached her eyes. She wasn't planning a party. She was performing a script. And I'd bought it. The wind shifted as I crossed the Fremont Bridge. I cracked my window to let the cold in, needing something sharp to slice through the nausea curling in my stomach. I should have stayed longer that Thanksgiving. I should have watched more closely. But I was too wrapped up in deadlines, logo revisions, and coffee meetings that never really mattered. I pressed harder on the gas. Maris's house wasn't far now. My phone buzzed again on the passenger seat. I didn't check it. I already knew. Another beach post? Another faux sincere caption about making memories? They were probably toasting marshmallows while Maris sat alone in a room full of echoes. I pulled into her street just after 8. Her porch light was on, weak and flickering, casting a tired glow over the walkway. I parked by the curb and sat in the car for a moment, staring at that little square of light like it might answer all my questions. I wasn't sure what I was walking into. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know. But I stepped out anyway. My boots crunched the gravel path as I approached. The air smelled faintly of pine and something sweet. Sugar? Frosting? I knocked once. Silence. Then the soft scrape of slippers against hardwood. The door creaked open an inch. "Elowen?" Her voice was small, cautious. I leaned in just enough to see her face, pale, worn, her silver hair pinned back in a loose twist. She blinked as if trying to confirm I was real. You didn't have to come," she said, stepping back. I entered slowly. The warmth hit me first, not from the air, but from the smell of her lemon cake still lingering in the kitchen. Then the quiet. Too quiet. "Where is everyone?" I asked, even though I already knew. She looked away, adjusting her cardigan like it suddenly didn't fit. "They're at the beach," she said softly. "They told me I'd slow them down, said it was best I stayed home." The words landed like broken glass. "They said that?" I asked, my voice cracking. She gave a small nod. Her hands trembled as she reached for the cake knife on the dining table, wiping crumbs that didn't need wiping. They promised they'd be back by 6. I even made the roast. She gestured weakly toward the kitchen. Still warm, I think. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. My gaze drifted to the table, the cake still mostly intact, one slice gone. A plate sat nearby, barely touched. Her birthday card sat unopened beside it. I walked over and ran my finger along the envelope. "To Mom," it read, not even signed. My fists clenched before I even noticed. "That's how they treat you?" I muttered. "After all you've done?" She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were glassy, not from tears, but from something older, something deeper. "People grow busy," she said. "Life pulls them." "No," I said. "This isn't about busy." My voice shook. I was trying to hold it together, but something inside me cracked. The betrayal wasn't mine, not directly, but it felt personal, like a wound I'd ignored until now. She walked slowly toward her armchair and lowered herself down with effort, her back curved, fragile and hollow. "I told myself it was okay," she whispered, "that maybe they'd forgotten the time. But when I saw the posts—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. I crossed the room and knelt beside her, placing my hand on hers. "I'm here now," I said quietly. A long silence passed between us. Then, the twist I didn't expect. "They asked about my will last week," she said suddenly. "Vera did. Said I should let her handle things. That it'd be easier that way." My breath caught. I pulled back just enough to look her in the eye. "And did you?" She hesitated. I don't remember," she said. "She brought papers, called them tax forms, said it'd help with the house." My stomach dropped. Something icy settled in my bones, colder than the wind outside. This wasn't just neglect. This was something darker and deeper. I looked around the house, at the peeling wallpaper, the untouched party favors, the flickering bulb, and I knew in that moment I had to find out what else she'd signed, how far this betrayal went. I took a breath and stood. "Do you have the papers?" I asked. She shook her head. She said she'd keep them safe. Of course she did. I turned toward the hallway. Her bedroom was at the end, just past the linen closet. I didn't say what I was thinking. Not yet. But the questions were already crashing in my chest. Why would Vera need to keep them? And what else had Maris given away without even knowing? Maris had drifted off, her head resting gently against the back of her recliner, the flicker of the TV casting soft blues and oranges across her pale cheeks. Some old sitcom murmured in the background, but the laughter track felt eerily hollow in the silence of her living room. I sat across from her, perched on the edge of the couch, staring at the half-eaten slice of birthday cake she'd left on the coffee table. There was something almost sacred about the way she'd preserved the moment, like she hadn't quite given up, like she still hoped someone would walk through the door and shout, "Surprise!" But they never did. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I did anyway. Another beach photo, this one worse than the last. Torin grinning like an idiot, bottle in hand. Vera in the background, draped in some white shawl like a discount queen, smirking for the camera. And Jessa, sweet, indecisive Jessa, doing a double peace sign like nothing was wrong. Her caption? I stared at it for too long. My thumb hovered over the screen, tempted to reply with something sharp, something that would cut. But what could I say that wouldn't vanish in the scroll of comments and likes? Instead, I locked the phone and dropped it onto the cushion beside me. My jaw clenched until it hurt. They knew what today was. They knew. I got up quietly, careful not to wake Maris, and made my way to the front window. The porch light flickered outside, the bulb struggling to stay alive. Beyond it, the street was empty, the neighborhood wrapped in that sleepy suburban stillness that always made me uneasy, like the calm before something snaps. I needed answers. Not sympathy, not cake, not recycled excuses. I walked back to Maris's dining room, scanning the sideboard for anything, mail, calendars, maybe those tax papers Vera had her sign. The drawers were neat, almost too neat. She'd always been meticulous, but now the order felt curated. Tucked beneath a stack of old catalogs, I found a birthday card. Not the unopened one from before. This one had already been torn open and then quietly tucked away like it wasn't worth displaying. Inside, 3 words. "Happy birthday, Mom." No signature, just that. No warmth. No love. A slow burn started in my chest, creeping into my throat. I turned the card over and found a business card stuck in the fold. A financial services firm based in Eugene. Handwritten across the top in thick blue ink. "Talk to Paul. Trust me. V." I froze. V? Vera? What the hell was she doing referring financial advisors to Maris? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the edges of everything were starting to fray. As I stood there, a quiet voice came from behind me. "I thought you left." I turned. Maris had woken, her hands clutching the front of her sweater like it was armor. She looked smaller than before, as if sleep had drained what little light she had left. "I couldn't," I said gently. "Not tonight." She nodded, but her eyes flicked to the card in my hand. "That's just some man Vera recommended, said he could help with estate stuff. I never called." I didn't say anything. I just watched her. The way her gaze darted, the way her fingers picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "She said they'd stop by tomorrow," she added, almost too softly. "They won't." The words escaped before I could soften them. She flinched just slightly. I stepped closer. "Maris, I saw the photos. They're not coming. They never planned to." She pressed her lips together. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "They used to be different," she whispered. "When your mom was alive, there was laughter in this house." I sat beside her again, watching her stare out toward nothing. What changed? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Maybe I did. Maybe getting old turns you into a burden." I grabbed her hand before I even thought to. "You are not a burden." The silence that followed was loud. I was about to speak again when my phone buzzed on the couch. I didn't want to look, but something told me I had to. It was another post, Vera again. This time a group selfie, all of them holding margaritas, standing in front of their rented Airbnb. And in the corner of the shot, barely visible, a cake, pink frosting, 8 white candles. I blinked. Was that? They brought a cake. They brought her cake to the beach. I zoomed in. It wasn't just similar. It was the same damn cake. I knew that glaze, that crooked 8 candle, that uneven piped border Maris always struggled with. My hand started to shake. I looked at Maris. "Did you make 2 cakes?" I asked slowly. She furrowed her brows. "No, just the one." "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure. I spent all afternoon decorating it." I showed her the photo. At first she didn't understand what she was looking at. Then her mouth parted slightly. Her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Not just sadness, but betrayal. "That's mine." My stomach twisted. They took it. They took her cake. They must have dropped by earlier, took it while she was napping, and left her with a replacement. One they hadn't even bothered to decorate. She reached out slowly, pressing 2 fingers to the screen like she was trying to touch it, to confirm it was real. "I didn't know," she whispered. I didn't realize I'd stood up until I felt the blood rush to my head. My pulse thudded in my ears. Every bone in my body screamed for movement, for action. I paced once, then turned to her. "They don't get to do this," I said, voice low, shaky. "They don't get to humiliate you like this and pretend it's fine." She looked at me then, truly looked, and for the first time all night I saw it. Not just pain, but something steely beneath it. A flicker of quiet fury. I picked up my phone. I need to see what else they've done. Maris didn't stop me. She just nodded. As I walked down the hall toward her home office, something caught my eye through the curtain. A flash of movement at the edge of the front yard. I paused. A figure. Just standing there. Too far to see clearly, but close enough to know they were watching. I moved toward the window slowly, but by the time I pulled the curtain back, they were gone. The front yard was still empty when I stepped outside. The figure was gone. No footprints on the path. No car engine humming down the block. Just the faint rustle of wind slipping through the hedges and the soft tick of the porch light trying to die. But I knew what I saw. Someone had been there, watching. I lingered for a moment, listening, my breath shallow and fogging in the cool night air. Then I turned back inside, locking the door behind me with a sharp click that echoed louder than I meant it to. Back in the living room, Maris sat silently, staring at her folded hands. The TV still flickered, casting fractured colors across her skin. She looked older under that light, smaller, almost shrinking into herself. "They're watching us," I said. My voice came out lower than I expected. She didn't flinch, just nodded once. "I always felt it," she murmured. "Sometimes at night I'd hear the gate click, but when I'd check, no one was there." My chest tightened. How long had this been going on? I crossed the room, sat beside her again, and took a steadying breath. I couldn't let fear dictate the next move. Not now. I canceled the gallery opening, I told her. I texted my boss. She looked at me, eyes wide. "But your career?" "I'll figure it out," I said, already reaching for the pile of unopened mail by the bookshelf. "You come first." Her lip trembled, but she said nothing. Instead, she reached for the knit blanket over the armrest and pulled it over her lap, slowly, like her body needed protection from more than the cold. I flipped through the mail. Bills, junk, a few medical flyers. Then a bank envelope, thick, like it had more than a single statement inside. The moment I opened it, my stomach dropped. The first page was innocent enough, standard checking summary. But then came the withdrawals. Thousands. Scattered across the last 3 months, always just under a flagging threshold, small enough not to trigger calls, but large enough to drain slowly, deliberately. And the signature on one, I froze. Not Maris's, not her handwriting, not even close. But Vera's name. I felt the room tilt. "Maris, did you give Vera access to your account?" She blinked. "She said it was just for bill pay, that she'd help with the electric and taxes while I focused on my birthday." My hand gripped the paper so tight the edge cut my palm. I couldn't breathe for a second. This wasn't just neglect. This was theft. Calculated, cowardly, cold. I set the envelope down with shaky fingers and turned to her. "You trusted her." Her shoulders rose, then dropped, like she'd carried that shame for months. "I didn't want to believe she'd hurt me," she whispered. "She's still family." "No," I said, firmer than before. "Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't disappear on your birthday and steal from you while they drink on the beach." The words cracked through the room like thunder. She closed her eyes slowly. "I just wanted to see her happy," she said. It shattered something in me. This wasn't just a woman abandoned. This was a woman groomed into silence. I stood and paced, unable to sit anymore. Flashbacks hit me like slaps. Vera handing Maris tax forms over the kitchen table, brushing off questions with that syrupy voice of hers, that condescending smile, the way she'd speak about Maris in the third person, like she wasn't even in the room. All of it pointed to one thing: control. I had to stop her. I grabbed my coat, shoving the envelope into my bag. Maris looked up, startled. "Where are you going?" "I need answers, and I'm not waiting for them to hand them over." Her mouth opened, but I didn't give her time to protest. "I'll be back in a few hours. Lock the doors. Don't answer for anyone but me." She nodded slowly, though I could see the fear behind her eyes. The night had grown colder by the time I got in the car. The engine grumbled awake like it didn't want to move, and I didn't blame it. My fingers gripped the wheel hard as I drove. The city blurred by. Neon signs, blurred taillights, long shadows stretched across intersections like memories trying to catch me. But I didn't stop. Not until I reached Vera's house. Their other house. The one in the hills, not the beach rental. The place she always called the real home, with its stone driveway and ornamental grasses planted just so, like an apology for how empty it all felt. Her SUV wasn't there, but Torrin's truck was. I sat in the car for a beat, gathering myself. My heart pounded so loud it felt like it echoed in my ears. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing, maybe too much, but I had to look. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots. The porch light was off, no movement inside. I knocked once, nothing. Then again, harder, a shuffle, then footsteps. The door creaked open an inch. Torrin, hair rumpled, eyes bleary. "Elowen?" I didn't waste time. "I need to see the paperwork. The ones Vera had Maris sign." His eyes darted away. Guilt was instant. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." He shifted. "She said Maris agreed." "She didn't. She thought she was signing tax forms." He swallowed. Hard. "She told me to burn them after the transfer," he said. My chest squeezed. "What transfer?" He hesitated. I stepped closer. "If you don't tell me, I swear to God." "She moved the savings," he said, almost a whisper, "all of it, into a joint account under her name." I couldn't breathe. "How much?" "Everything," he said. "Nearly 200 grand. My body went still. I couldn't feel my legs. He backed up slowly, like he regretted opening the door. "I didn't think she'd actually—" I turned and walked away before he could finish. My vision tunneled. Cold wind slapped my face, but it didn't clear the fog building behind my eyes. Back in the car, I sat in silence for a long time. $200,000. Gone. Taken from a woman who'd baked her own birthday cake and waited all day for people who never showed. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles cracked. Then, headlights in the rearview mirror, a car slowing, pausing. I leaned forward, trying to catch the plate, but the lights cut off. The car stayed parked, just far enough to remain shadowed. Someone was watching again. I didn't wait. I peeled out of the driveway and hit the road, but even as the tires screeched, I knew it wasn't over. They weren't just stealing money. They were trying to erase her, and I was done staying quiet. I didn't sleep, even when I made it back to Maris's house just past midnight, even after I triple-locked the front door and drew every curtain tight. My eyes stayed open, fixed on the ceiling above the guest room bed, heart pounding like it was chasing something I hadn't caught yet. $200,000. Gone. Signed away in ink Maris didn't remember holding. And someone was watching us. Every creak in the floorboards made me tense. Every gust of wind felt like breath on the back of my neck. By morning I was running on fumes and anger. The light filtering through the window was soft, but my chest felt sharp, like there wasn't enough air in the room. I found Maris in the kitchen, stirring instant oatmeal with a spoon that clinked too loud in the silence. Her eyes were puffy. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "You didn't need to stay," she said softly, not meeting my eyes. "I did." She gave a tired nod, then slid the sugar bowl closer like a peace offering. "You always liked it sweeter." I didn't answer. Instead, I said, "Maris, I need to go through some of your things." She paused. "Why?" "Because I don't think Vera just took money. I think she's hiding something." Her mouth opened, then shut again. She clutched the edge of the counter with both hands as if bracing for impact. I started in the hallway closet. Old coats, boxes of Christmas lights, a broken toaster, nothing. Then the attic, just dust and forgotten furniture. It wasn't until I got to her bedroom, the place I'd been avoiding out of respect, that I saw it. A black tin box shoved halfway beneath the bed. It was old. Rust on the hinges, a tiny brass lock holding it shut. I knelt, pulled it out, and held it up. "Maris?" She appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "What's this?" I asked. She stared at the box like it might bite. "Just old notes, ramblings." Her voice was too quick, too rehearsed. "You've kept it locked," I said. "There's nothing important in there." My thumb ran along the edge of the lock. "You're shaking." She looked down, and sure enough, her fingers were trembling against the doorframe. "I need to see what's inside," I said. Her jaw clenched. "Why?" "Because I think you're hiding something that could help us. Something Vera doesn't want anyone to see." She didn't answer. But she didn't stop me either. I picked the lock using an old bobby pin from my wallet, a trick I'd learned from an ex who'd locked himself out of his apartment more times than I could count. It clicked open faster than I expected. Inside was a diary, leather-bound, weathered, no title, just initials in gold leaf that had half faded away. I opened the first page and froze. The handwriting was unmistakably Maris's. But the words? They weren't just notes. They were confessions. Paragraph after paragraph about the girls, about Vera, about the promises made and broken, about documents she didn't understand but signed anyway. Her fears, her doubts, her guilt, and then, deeper in, an entry that hit me like ice water. March 3rd. She said if I didn't sign, she'd take me to court, said I was unfit, that I was losing my mind. I signed. I had to. I just wanted her to stop yelling. My fingers tightened around the pages. "She threatened you," I said aloud. Maris sat on the edge of the bed, head low. She said it was temporary. that I'd still have my say. But after that, the mail stopped coming in my name. She started showing up unannounced, started putting things in boxes, like she was moving me out. My throat closed. She said I should rest more, Maris continued, her voice faint. She unplugged the phone for a while, took my cell charger, told me I was confusing people. Isolation, control, gaslighting, classic elder abuse, and none of us saw it, not in time. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. She looked up, eyes red, because I didn't want to believe it was happening. The room fell into a thick silence, the kind that sticks to your skin. I flipped to the last written entry, dated just 3 weeks ago. She said I forgot Elowen's name. I didn't. I pretended. It was easier than arguing. I miss her. I hope she comes back soon. My chest cracked. I sat down beside her, my voice shaking. "You are not crazy. You remember everything that matters." She gave the smallest smile. "I remember your drawings on the fridge, your stubborn little fists. You always protected me, even when you were 10. And suddenly, I was 10 again, standing between Vera and Maris in the middle of a family barbecue, arms outstretched, yelling about fairness while everyone else laughed. Only this time, no one was laughing. I stood and grabbed my phone, took photos of every page, every signature, every confession, then slid the diary into my bag. "This is evidence," I said. "We're not just fighting a family squabble. This is legal." Maris nodded. "Be careful. She won't like being challenged." She already doesn't. We moved to the kitchen. I brewed coffee while she took slow, steady sips of water. The whole house felt different now, not just sad, but haunted, like the walls had been waiting for someone to listen. Then, as I reached for the creamer, I saw movement again, through the window, this time closer, a figure walking past the mailbox, pausing, not delivering anything, just standing there. I ducked slightly, peeking from the side. A tall man, hoodie, facing the house. My breath caught. He stood still for 5 seconds, maybe 10, then turned and walked away. No delivery truck, no car, just him. I grabbed my phone, snapped a blurry photo, then turned to Maris. "There's someone out there, again." She looked up, startled. "Do you think she's sending people?" "I don't know." But the hairs on the back of my neck were standing straight. I checked the locks again, set the porch camera app to record continuously. And for the first time since I arrived, I closed the blackout curtains tight. Then I looked at the diary in my bag. Someone didn't want this read, and now they knew I had it. The call came just after 10 a.m. I was in the middle of emailing a legal aid clinic when my phone lit up with her name, Vera. For a moment my thumb hovered over the screen. A silent war played out in my chest. Answer or ignore? But I was done hiding. I hit accept and pressed the phone to my ear. "Elowen," she purred like we were old friends. "I heard you've been playing detective." Her voice was too smooth, like syrup over glass shards. "I've been reading Maris's diary," I said. "It's a hell of a story. You come off exactly how I remember you." A pause, then a breathy laugh. "She's confused, Elle. You know that. She's always had a flair for the dramatic." I didn't respond. She went on. "It's not healthy, dragging her into old memories. She needs peace, routine, not you stirring up. You stole her savings." Another pause, shorter this time. "That's a serious accusation." "I have documents, her entries, a photo of the cake you took." Her tone flattened. "You need to stop. Now." I stared at the wallpaper peeling by Maris's fridge, anger rising in tight waves behind my ribs. "You emptied her account, gaslit her into thinking she was losing her mind. And when she cried alone on her birthday, you toasted marshmallows by the sea. Elowen, you're disgusting." That finally got a reaction. I heard the shift, the teeth behind the smile. "You're young, emotional. You have no idea how complicated caring for someone can be. She doesn't need your care. She needs a lawyer." "Try it," she said, suddenly cold. "Try to drag this through court and see what's left of her when you're done." My blood iced over. There it was, the real Vera. "She's fragile," she added. "Think carefully about what you're doing." "I already have." She hung up. The silence in the room afterward was crushing. I sat back, the phone still pressed to my cheek, my heart pounding like a fist against a locked door. So that was her first move. Intimidation dressed as concern. It wouldn't work, but it rattled me more than I wanted to admit. I went to check on Maris. She was in her recliner, hands folded, eyes drifting toward the window every few seconds like she expected someone. "Did she call?" she asked softly. I nodded. "She's scared." "She should be." There was a quiet steel in her voice I hadn't heard in years. I sat on the ottoman beside her. "We're going to talk to a lawyer." She reached out, brushing my hand. "Promise me something. Anything. If this becomes too much, if they come after you—" "They won't," I said, firmer than I felt. "And if they do, they'll regret it." A beat passed. Her eyes brimmed with something unspoken. Pride, maybe, or guilt. Then came the knock. 3 firm raps on the front door. I stood quickly, heart hammering. Maris's face went pale. I peered through the peephole. A woman stood on the porch, blonde, mid-30s, sharp blazer, clipboard in hand. I cracked the door open an inch. "Elowen James?" she asked. "Yes?" "I'm from Elder Services. We received an anonymous concern regarding Mrs. Maris Delaney's welfare." I blinked. "What kind of concern?" "Claims of emotional distress, possible coercion. We're conducting a wellness check." Behind me, Maris whispered, "She sent them." The woman smiled tightly. "Mind if I come in?" I hesitated. Every instinct told me to slam the door, but if I refused, they'd mark us down as evasive, and if this was official, I needed them to see the truth, not Vera's version of it. I opened the door. She stepped inside, shoes clicking against the hardwood. Maris tried to straighten up in her chair, pulling the blanket tighter around her lap. "I'm sorry for the surprise," the woman said, flipping through her folder. "We just want to ensure Mrs. Delaney is safe and cared for." "She is," I said. She turned to Maris. "And how are you feeling, ma'am?" Maris looked at me, then at her. "Better. Since Elowen came back. Have you felt pressured? Felt unsafe? Confused?" Maris hesitated. My chest tightened. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "but not because of her." The woman raised an eyebrow. "It's my niece," Maris continued. "Vera. She's been taking liberties." "Such as?" "She made me sign things I didn't understand. Took money. Told people I was losing my mind." I saw the social worker's posture shift. More alert now, listening. I handed her copies of the bank statements and the photos I'd printed from the diary. She scanned them quietly, her mouth pressed into a hard line. "I'll need to take this back with me," she said, "and will likely follow up." "Please do," I replied. "We're not hiding anything." She left 10 minutes later. The second the door clicked shut, Maris exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. "That wasn't just a check-in," I said. "That was an attack." "Vera's starting to panic," Maris whispered. "That's when she's most dangerous." She was right. This wasn't just going to be a legal battle. It was going to get dirty. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside to grab a package left near the fence. As I bent down, I saw it. Another one. A folded note tucked beneath the mat. No envelope. Just my name scrawled in block letters. I opened it with shaking hands. One line. "You don't know everything she did. Stop digging." My stomach turned. The handwriting wasn't Vera's. It was Torrin's. I stared at the note in my hand like it might burn through my skin. "You don't know everything she did. Stop digging." Torrin's blocky, unmistakable handwriting stared back at me, stiff, like he'd carved the letters in fear or guilt, or both. The words shouldn't have shaken me, but they did. Not just because of the threat, but because of the doubt stitched beneath it. "You don't know everything she did. Who was she? Maris? Was he talking about Maris?" The air around me felt thinner. Even the sounds, birds, wind, a distant lawnmower, faded into static. I read the note again and again, but the meaning didn't change. I slipped it into my pocket, walked back inside, and locked the door behind me. Maris looked up from the kitchen table where she was sorting old recipe cards, like today was just another normal morning. Like a note on the porch warning her granddaughter to stop investigating wasn't sitting like a stone in my chest. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice thin. No, but I nodded anyway. I didn't want her to see my panic. Not yet. "I need to look through that file drawer in your office," I said. She gave a small nod. "It's mostly old insurance stuff. But I wasn't looking for insurance. I was looking for proof. In her back bedroom, a space frozen in time with faded curtains and photos of smiling cousins I hadn't seen in years, I pulled open the rusted metal drawer. I dug past folders labeled utilities, medical, Elowen school records, and finally found one marked in shaky black marker, legal. I pulled it out, sat on the floor, and started flipping. For a few minutes it was all mundane. A will dated 2009, an old lease, a healthcare proxy with my mom's name scratched out and replaced with mine. I almost missed it. Then there it was. A stack of forms, power of attorney, joint account authorization, property management rights, all signed in Maris's name. Only the signature wasn't hers, not even close. I held it up to the light. I'd seen her handwriting my entire life. Birthday cards, notes in lunchboxes, shopping lists she stuck to the fridge. This was tight, slanted, and deliberate. It screamed forgery. And beneath her name, Vera's, a witness line, signed and dated. My stomach churned. She'd staged the entire thing. The document wasn't just fraudulent. It was planned, documented, filed. I flipped through the rest, each form more damning than the last. She hadn't just drained Maris's savings. She'd seized control of her life. I grabbed my phone, snapped photos of everything, page by page, back and front. I texted them to the legal aid rep I'd spoken with the night before, then called immediately. She picked up on the second ring. "Elowen," she said, "I was just reviewing the intake notes. Do you have something?" "I have everything," I said, breath quickening. "Power of attorney forged, full financial access, and a signature that isn't hers." "Are you sure?" 100%. "Then we have a case." I leaned back against the wall, letting those words settle into my spine like armor. We have a case. But as I sat there, knees pulled tight, heart still racing, something else nagged at me. Torrens' note. You don't know everything she did. I knew Vera was manipulative, a thief, a liar. But what if that wasn't the whole story? What if there was something darker? I stood and walked back toward the kitchen. Maris was stirring a cup of tea, the spoon clinking gently against the porcelain. I sat across from her. "I found the forged documents." Her hands stopped. "I knew she was doing something," she whispered, "but I didn't want to look too closely." "She gave herself full access, signed your name, faked your approval." Maris closed her eyes. "I trusted her," she said. "After your mother passed, I think I just wanted someone to take over. I was tired." I reached across the table, gently resting my hand on hers. "You didn't fail," I said. "She did." She nodded once, but her eyes didn't meet mine. "She used to be so sweet," Maris murmured, "when she was young. She'd braid my hair, help me with groceries. But something changed after the inheritance talk." I tilted my head. "What talk?" She hesitated. "I had a plan. Years ago. After your mother died, I revised my will. I wanted you to inherit the house." My breath caught. "You never told me that." "I didn't want you to feel obligated. You had your own life. But I think Vera found out. That's when she started coming around more, asking questions, playing helpful. It fit too well, too neat." I pressed my fingers to my temples. "I need to get the original will," I said. "Do you remember where it is?" "Safe deposit box, downtown. I haven't touched it in years." I nodded. "I'll go first thing tomorrow." Maris exhaled, long and slow, like something in her had been loosened. But just as I stood, her landline rang. We both jumped. I stared at it, watching the caller ID. Blocked number. I picked up. "Elowen James?" a man's voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Paul Rickley, financial advisor." The name slapped me across the face. I remembered it, scribbled on the business card I'd found weeks ago. "I'd like to speak with you regarding some recent transactions tied to Mrs. Delaney's accounts." My fingers curled tightly around the receiver. "Go on?" "There's been some movement, unusual transfers. I tried reaching the primary account contact, but the number is disconnected." "Because she wasn't supposed to be the contact." "I'm sorry?" "She forged her way into that role. Maris never authorized it." Silence. Then, "Miss James, I think we need to meet." I wrote down the time and place, my voice calm but my thoughts unraveling. After I hung up, I looked at Maris. "Someone else helped Vera." Her eyes darkened. "Who?" "I don't know yet. But I would." I stepped outside to clear my head. The air was cooler now, tinged with smoke from a distant fireplace. I glanced down the street. Quiet, normal. But something felt off. I turned back toward the porch and saw the front door, ajar. I'd locked it. I know I locked it. I rushed inside. Maris? No answer. The back door was open, wind fluttering the curtains. The house was empty. And the diary? Gone. The diary was gone. Maris was gone. The front door hung half shut behind me as I stood frozen in the hallway, every sound around me dialed to 10. The ticking wall clock, the refrigerator hum, the quick, shallow rhythm of my own breath. I called her name once, then louder. No answer. I sprinted through the house like a storm, checking the bathroom, her bedroom, even the coat closet. The back door was wide open, a breeze stirring the curtain like someone had just slipped through it. Her slippers were still by the mat. She wouldn't have walked out barefoot. I stepped outside, bare panic clawing at the edges of my throat. The street was too quiet. No movement, no cars pulling away, just a single crow perched on the wire overhead, watching like it knew something I didn't. And then, soft footsteps on gravel behind me. I spun. Lyra? My elderly neighbor stood at the gate, holding a small woven basket. Her face pinched the moment she saw mine. Elowen, what happened? She's gone, I said, rushing to her. Maris, someone took her. Lyra didn't flinch. She set the basket down slowly and reached into her pocket, pulling out a folded envelope. I was coming to give this to you, she said, voice low. It was taped to my door this morning. I unfolded it with trembling hands. Inside was a typed message. No signature. Stay out of it. You don't want to end up like her. My knees nearly buckled. They took her, I whispered. Lyra steadied me with a hand on my elbow. Come inside, she said, now. She led me into her cozy, over-scented home. Cinnamon potpourri and lemon cleaner clashed in the air. Her cat blinked lazily at me from the windowsill. I didn't want to believe what you were saying at first, she said as she poured tea, her hands trembling slightly. But I've seen things, heard things. Like what? Vera came around a lot over the past year, always when you weren't here. Sometimes with her husband, sometimes alone. She never stayed long, but she always left with papers. Once I saw her holding a checkbook. My breath hitched. Did Maris look okay? She looked tired, smaller. Once I tried to say hi, and she barely looked at me. The tea steamed in my cup, untouched. Lyra sat across from me. Elowen, if you're ready to fight, I'll help you. I'm not the only one who's seen things. You'd testify? In a heartbeat. Her voice was stronger than I expected. That flicker of hope ignited something in me. Can you get the others? I'll make calls, she said. There's Mrs. Blakely across the street, and Ron next door. He has a camera facing Maris's side yard. Maybe it caught something. Please, I said. I need everything we can get. I went back to Maris's house, nerves fraying like the edge of a rope. I changed the locks within the hour, double-checked every window. Then I waited. By sunset, 3 neighbors had shown up at Lyra's. Mrs. Blakely brought a notebook filled with timestamps. She always came on Thursdays, she told me, between 2 and 4. One time I overheard her yelling through the walls, called Maris a burden. Ron handed me a USB stick. I pulled the last month of footage. There's one guy, tall, hoodie, hanging around at night. My stomach dropped. The same figure I'd seen before. We watched a clip on Lyra's laptop. Night vision, the side yard. At 3:12 a.m., the figure stepped into frame, stood by Maris's window, then pulled something from his pocket. Is that a phone? I asked. Lyra squinted. I think he's taking pictures. Or scanning. What? If they knew about the diary, maybe they were trying to confirm it was still here. Ron nodded. Could have been casing the place. I pressed pause. The grainy image of the shadowy man stared back at me. A beat of silence passed. Then Lyra looked me dead in the eye. Vera's not working alone. The words stuck. Something in me wanted to deny it, to believe it was just one rotten relative. But the more I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't random, it was layered, planned. She'll come back for more, I said. Then we be ready, Lyra replied. Her voice surprised me. It wasn't frightened, it was fierce. The next morning I called Jessa. She didn't pick up. I tried again, and again. On the 4th call, she answered. Elle? Where is she? I snapped. A long pause. Where's who? Maris, don't play dumb. I don't know. I haven't talked to her since. I know about the forgery, the money, the diary. Another silence. Deeper this time, then. I didn't know about the diary. You knew something, I said. You always knew something. She exhaled shakily. I wanted to help, but she said she'd cut me off, said I'd never see a cent. You're complicit. I didn't sign anything. But you watched. You let it happen. I didn't know how bad it was, she whispered. I didn't care anymore. Regret wasn't enough. You want redemption? I said. Help me. A pause. Then, what do you need? Testimony, emails, photos, anything that puts her in the light she's hiding from. Okay, she said. Okay, I'll send what I have. Before I could hang up, she added, be careful, Vera's unraveling. And when she unravels, she doesn't go down quietly. Later that day, an email came through from Jessa, screenshots of group texts, photos of Vera holding stacks of papers, smiling with Maris's signature already inked, even a voice memo of her saying, she won't remember signing it tomorrow, that's the beauty of it. I saved it all. Lyra and I printed copies and assembled folders. By nightfall, we had a full binder. We weren't just a whisper anymore. We were a case. But just before I went to bed, a message slid under the front door. Typed, cold. You made her disappear, just like your mother. My blood ran cold, because no one outside this family knew what really happened to my mom. The note sat under my fingertips like it was pulsing. You made her disappear, just like your mother. That last line curled in my gut like poison, not because it was wrong, but because no one beyond blood should have known that my mother didn't die peacefully in her sleep, that her last days weren't serene or resolved, that her disappearance from our lives wasn't just grief. I pressed my fingers to my temples. I hadn't told anyone, not friends, not exes, not co-workers, how she vanished before the diagnosis ever landed, that she spiraled, that Vera was the only one with her in the end, and she never told me what really happened. I rose slowly from the table, heart thumping in my ears like a second pulse. I folded the note and slipped it into the binder with the others. If they were trying to rattle me, it was working, but it was also confirming something I hadn't wanted to believe until now. This wasn't about just money. This was personal. This was legacy. And maybe vengeance. I pulled open the blinds to check the porch, the sidewalk, the far edge of the neighbor's yard. No movement, but it felt like someone was out there, like the air itself was watching. I stepped outside, one hand still on the doorframe, and scanned the street. A flicker. To the left, across the street, between the hedges. Movement. Too fast to catch a face. I ran, crossed the yard, leapt over Lyra's flower bed, nearly lost my balance, but whoever it was had already vanished into the block's shadow. I stood in the middle of the sidewalk, heaving, shoes damp from dew, the cold settling against the sweat along my neck. Who were they? And how much had they seen? Back inside, I locked everything, bolted doors, closed blinds, every motion sharper than the last. Then I turned to the one person who might still have answers. Jessa, I texted her. Tell me everything about what happened to my mom. Now. No response. I waited 5 minutes. Then 10. Finally, 3 gray dots bubbled onto my screen. I don't know the full story, but I know she and Vera fought the day before the hospital. About what? Something about the will, and a folder. She said she was going to change everything. My breath stopped short. A folder. Maris had said the original will was locked in a safe deposit box. What if that wasn't all that was inside? Where was the folder last seen? I typed. At Maris's. But then it disappeared. Vera said Mom must have lost it. Lost it. Or Vera made sure she did. I shoved my coat on and headed to Lyra's. I couldn't sit with this alone anymore. She answered before I even knocked. You look like you saw a ghost, she said, stepping aside. I might have, I replied. I laid the note on her kitchen table. Her lips thinned as she read it. They're getting desperate. It mentions my mom. She looked up sharply. You think it's Torin? I don't think he's smart enough to hint that hard, but he's definitely involved. We sat in silence for a moment, her hand resting over mine like an anchor. Then she said, It's time you had eyes on the outside. What do you mean? Security, real security. That evening, Ron helped me set up 2 motion-activated cameras, one facing the driveway, one angled at the side yard where the figure had appeared on Ron's footage. We stayed up reviewing last week's footage together, Grainy clips of cars passing, squirrels triggering sensors, nothing useful. Until 2:14 a.m. Tuesday. The side yard camera caught something. Not the hoodie guy, a woman, back turned, blonde hair pulled into a bun, jacket zipped to her chin. She stood at the fence, looked straight into the lens, smiled, and then walked away. I paused the footage, zoomed in, my throat tightened. It wasn't just any woman, it was Vera. She knew where the cameras were, Ron muttered. She wanted me to know she was here. She's taunting you, Lyra exhaled. Or warning you. I looked at the clock. It was nearly midnight. I wasn't sleeping. Instead, I sat with a copy of Maris's will in front of me, highlighter in hand, and the binder full of statements and screenshots beside it, trying to organize chaos into something a judge couldn't ignore. Then my phone lit up again. A private number. I stared at it, debating, and then answered. Elowen. Her voice, calm, cold, deliberate. Where is she? I asked. You took her, she said like it was fact. I didn't. Then she ran from you. I hope you think long and hard about that. I could hear ice clinking in a glass in the background. Why are you doing this? I asked. A pause. Then, because she never loved me the way she loved your mother, or you. The raw bitterness in her voice sent a chill down my spine. You're jealous of an 80-year-old woman? I'm correcting history. My throat tightened. Where is she? She's safer without you, she whispered. Click. I slammed the phone on the table and nearly knocked over the lamp. She knew exactly what she was doing, dangling clues, twisting fear into control, the same way she'd done to Maris. But that last thing she said, correcting history, it stuck. What history? I opened the bottom drawer of Maris's file cabinet again, scanning for anything I'd missed. Receipts, deeds, notes. Then I found it. A letter. Handwritten. Unsent. Dated 12 years ago. To my granddaughter Elowen, in case I never get to explain. I froze. My eyes skimmed the first lines. Maris had suspected Vera of manipulating her even back then. But the last paragraph? Your mother didn't just get sick. There were arguments, secrets she tried to protect. Vera wanted control, and when she couldn't get it, she isolated her. I tried to stop it, but by the time I realized how far she'd gone, it was too late. I sat back in my chair, heart beating in my throat. This wasn't just about Maris. It was never just about her. This went all the way back, and now the person who could still tell me the truth was missing. The courthouse smelled like dust and recycled air. I sat on the worn wooden bench outside courtroom B, binder in my lap, palms sweating through my blazer sleeves. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, matching the hum in my chest. Every few seconds I glanced at the hallway clock, even though the second hand dragged like it was taunting me. Maris still hadn't been found, but I had the evidence, the diary, the forged signatures, the letter she wrote to me, the one I'd read again at 3 a.m. alone at the kitchen table, blinking away the memory of my mother's voice and the way Vera had twisted her too. And now, for the first time, we had a judge who would listen. Behind the heavy door, I could hear murmurs, the quiet shifting of papers, the occasional cough. Somewhere inside, Vera was waiting, and from what I'd heard through back channels, she wasn't backing down. She was doubling down. Jessa appeared at the end of the hallway, her expression taut. I'm still shaking, she said, sitting beside me. You're doing the right thing, I whispered. I hope so. She threatened to freeze my trust if I testified. Let her try. The door opened, and a bailiff called our names. I stood on legs that felt like stilts, heart hammering like it wanted to claw out of my chest. Jessa followed behind, silent. Inside, the courtroom felt smaller than I expected. The judge, silver hair, glasses perched on the bridge of her nose, didn't look up as we entered. But Vera did. She was seated at the defense table, hair pinned, lips painted the same smirking red I'd seen 100 times in old family photos. Her expression barely flickered when our eyes met. But her fingers, they twitched slightly on the table. She wasn't as confident as she looked. The proceedings began. The opposing attorney, some thin-lipped man with too much cologne, argued that Maris was clearly in declining mental health and had granted power of attorney of her own volition. Then it was my turn. I stepped up to the front with shaking hands and opened the binder. I have proof of forgery, I said. bank records, video surveillance, and a notarized letter from a financial advisor Vera used to channel the funds. The judge looked up. "Go on?" I passed copies to the clerk. "The signature on this document," I continued, "does not match Maris's confirmed handwriting. 3 separate handwriting experts reviewed it. The bank transactions show systematic withdrawals, all signed under her name after Maris claims she revoked consent." "And the diary?" the judge asked. I held it up. "This is in Maris's own words, page after page. She describes manipulation, isolation, even emotional abuse." The judge flipped through the photocopies, brows pinched. Then came Jessa. She stood, voice shaking but steady, and told them what she'd seen, how Vera had bragged about getting Maris to sign off on everything, how she'd claimed Maris was too far gone to notice, how she laughed while deleting old voicemail messages on Maris's phone. "She told me," Jessa said quietly, "that by the time Maris realized what she'd signed, it'd be too late to undo." Vera's attorney tried to object, but the judge silenced him. "Anything else, Ms. James?" I hesitated. Then I pulled out the final letter. "My grandmother wrote this. She intended to leave her house, her legacy, to me. It was never about money. It was about being seen, being remembered." The courtroom went still. Then the judge said, "Let's recess for 20 minutes." Outside, I exhaled like I hadn't in weeks. Jessa slumped into the bench beside me. "I think it landed," she said. "She looked rattled," I replied, "even behind that lipstick." But inside, I wasn't calm, because Maris was still missing, and every second she stayed gone was another second Vera could twist the story. When we returned, the courtroom felt tighter, like the walls were listening. The judge straightened her glasses. "In light of the evidence, I'm ruling to suspend the existing power of attorney and open an investigation into misuse of elder authority. Furthermore," she paused, "Maris Delaney's previous will is hereby restored as primary." I froze. She wasn't done. "In that will," the judge said, "Elowen James is named legal heir and guardian, pending a full wellness check of Ms. Delaney." I wanted to cry, but I couldn't look away from Vera. Her face was pale, her hands clutched her purse like it might anchor her to the floor. And then, she snapped. "This is a setup," she barked. "They're framing me. That old woman couldn't remember what year it was. You think she knew what she was writing in that diary?" The judge banged her gavel. "Sit down, Ms. Wren." Vera stood, voice rising. "She was never going to leave it to Elowen. Never. She didn't deserve it. Ms. Wren, she chose the wrong daughter, and now she's doing it again." And just like that, the mask slipped. The courtroom murmured. Even her lawyer recoiled slightly. The judge turned to security. "Escort her out, and place a call to Officer Ramirez regarding Ms. Delaney's welfare." I caught Jessa's eye. Her face was pale, stunned. She whispered, "She just confessed." "She cracked," I said. "And now we follow that crack all the way to wherever she left Maris." As we stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed. "Unknown number," I answered. "You need to get to the lake house," a voice whispered. "Tonight." "Who is this?" Click. The call ended. I turned to Jessa. "What lake house?" Her face went blank. Then she whispered, "The one Dad bought for cash last year." I didn't even hesitate. "Grab your keys." The road to the lake house was long and narrow, carved through thick pines that clawed at the night sky like fingers. Jessa drove, white-knuckled, barely blinking. I sat beside her, clutching my phone, checking every signal bar like it might give me a sign. The silence between us wasn't hostile. It was electric, fragile, charged. "I didn't know he still owned this place," I muttered. "He bought it under a shell company," Jessa replied. "Said it was for fishing weekends, but he never fished." My stomach churned. It was nearing 11 p.m. when we saw it. A squat, single-story cabin tucked behind a clearing. One porch light on. No cars in the gravel lot. The trees swayed around it like guards. We pulled up slowly, killed the headlights. I stepped out into the cool air. Every sound, crunch of gravel underfoot, rustle of wind through trees, felt amplified, cinematic, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. "Wait," Jessa said, her hand on my arm. "What if she's not alone in there?" I hesitated, then slipped the small canister of pepper spray from my coat pocket. That's why I'm going first." We crept up the steps. The wood creaked beneath us. I knocked once. No answer. I tried the knob. Unlocked. The door swung open with a whisper. Inside, the place smelled like mildew and mothballs. A single lamp flickered on a table. The floorboards groaned as we stepped in. "Maris?" I called. Nothing. Then, faint, from the back, something moved. I followed the sound, my breath shallow. There she was, in a back bedroom, sitting upright on a twin bed, hands folded neatly in her lap. Maris. She looked up slowly and smiled. Elowen. My knees buckled. I rushed to her, wrapped my arms around her frail shoulders. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "No," she said calmly. "Just took my phone, told me to rest, that it would be over soon." Jessa hovered behind me, eyes wide. "Who brought you here?" Maris hesitated. "Torin," she said finally. "He said Vera needed time to cool down, that it was best I stayed out of sight." My fists clenched. "She hid you, to silence you, to stall the hearing." Maris nodded. "But I never stopped believing you'd come." I helped her up gently. "We're going home," I said. But as we turned to leave, a shadow filled the hallway. Torin, blocking the doorframe. His face was pale, eyes glassy. "You shouldn't have come," he said, voice trembling. Jessa stepped forward. "Get out of the way." "She said you'd ruin everything," he whispered. "That Maris didn't know what was best anymore." "Move," I growled. He blinked, chest rising and falling like a man in over his head. Then he stepped aside. "She's going to kill me for this," he mumbled. "Good," I said. We drove straight to the police station. By 1 a.m., Maris was wrapped in a wool blanket, a nurse checking her vitals while officers took our statements. Jessa stood in the lobby, phone glued to her ear, coordinating with the legal team. The court ruling from earlier meant we could move quickly. Emergency guardianship would be formalized within hours. I stood alone by the vending machine, still clutching the letter from Maris's file cabinet like a lifeline. Her words echoed in my head. She wanted control, and when she couldn't get it. Now she had nothing. By morning it was official. Maris was placed back in her home, safe, legal guardianship granted to me. Neighbors came by in waves. Lyra brought soup. Ron dropped off a thumb drive of the latest camera footage. Even Jessa returned, this time with a duffel of fresh clothes and groceries. "I found this in Dad's glove box," she said, handing me a torn envelope. Inside, copies of 2 additional checks, one written to Vera Consulting, the other to Cash. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. "We can add it to the civil suit," Jessa said. Maris sat in her recliner, gazing out the window like she was seeing it all for the first time. "I never realized how quiet safety feels." I sat on the floor beside her. "You're not alone anymore." She reached out, brushing her hand gently through my hair. "Neither are you." But victory doesn't always feel triumphant. Sometimes it feels like silence. That night I walked through the house while Maris slept peacefully. I checked the locks, reviewed the camera feeds, sat at the dining table alone with my thoughts. Then I heard a ping, a new email, from a burner address. Subject: "You think it's over? You forgot the other witness." Attached: 1 grainy photo, a child, in a sandbox. Me, and a figure beside me, back turned. My mother. The timestamp was from 24 years ago, and in the bottom corner, barely visible, a hand reaching toward her purse. It wasn't Vera's, it was Torin's. I stared at the old photo long after the screen went dark. Torin's hand, frozen in time, reaching toward my mother's purse. A frame so ordinary it might have been missed, if you didn't know what to look for, if you hadn't spent months digging through layers of betrayal. I ran my fingers along the edge of the image, heart pounding like it had the night I found Maris sitting alone at that table. That was the night everything cracked, but maybe this was the night it all fell into place. I sent the photo to Officer Ramirez. His reply was brief. "We've been waiting for this. On it." The next 48 hours were a blur. Torin was arrested just outside town. The charges weren't just fraud and conspiracy. They tied him to financial coercion going back 20 years, including my mother's final days. The missing pieces of her death finally came to light. It wasn't illness that kept her from us. It was manipulation, isolation. A fall, Vera insisted, was accidental, but hospital records now suggested otherwise. And the folder? Found at the lake house, taped beneath the old dresser drawer. Inside were handwritten revisions to Maris's will, a journal from my mother no one had seen, and the original title to Maris's property. Unsigned, unaltered. I read every word of my mother's journal like it was oxygen. She had tried to protect Maris, had tried to shield me too, but she never had a chance to finish the fight. Now I had. Vera took a plea deal, 5 years prison minimum, no inheritance, no contact with Maris. The courtroom was silent the day they let her out, not because no one cared, but because we'd all learned what silence could do. And Maris? She didn't cry when she heard the verdict. She just exhaled, long and steady, and said, "It's over." The day she came home for good, I placed fresh flowers on her nightstand, her favorite, white daisies and bluebells. She sat in the sunlight of her living room, scarf wrapped gently around her neck, watching the neighbors pull weeds and walk their dogs like the world had kept turning without her. "I thought I lost everything," she said quietly. "But I didn't." "No," I said, kneeling beside her. "You just needed someone to remind you who you are?" She smiled at me, and for a long time, we didn't speak. We didn't need to. Weeks passed, then months. And somehow, the house grew warmer. Not from temperature, but from life. Jessa visited weekly now, helping Maris with bills and doctor visits. She'd changed, really changed. Maybe because she'd finally stepped out from Vera's shadow. Maybe because she saw what silence could cost. One afternoon, while organizing Maris's boxes, I found that scarf again, the one she knitted for me all those years ago. Tucked inside was a faded, sticky note in my mother's handwriting. "Elowen always sees through the noise." My hands trembled as I folded it back. She had believed in me, even when I didn't. That night, I stood at the dining room table and lit a candle. No occasion, no ceremony, just light in a place that had known so much darkness. I poured 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for her. Then I whispered, "We made it." And I meant it, because we did. We stood up, we dug deeper. We didn't turn away. The truth was brutal, but it freed us. I used to think family was fixed. Blood, ties, names on paper. But it isn't. It's the ones who stay when it gets uncomfortable. The ones who show up, not for the party, but for the cleanup after. It's the ones who protect you even when you don't ask, especially when you don't ask. So if you've made it this far, thank you for walking this road with me. And if you've faced betrayal, silence, or been told to just move on, don't. Keep asking questions. Keep holding people accountable. You deserve answers. You deserve peace. If this story spoke to you, hit subscribe, give it a like, leave a comment about your own story, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready for another powerful story of truth and resilience, check out the next video on the channel. I'll be here, telling stories, one truth at a time.